Hey folks, it's Chris with the Human Project Podcast. In this episode, we're going to continue our discussion around dating principles. Last time we talked about intentionality in dating. Today we're going to talk about expectations. How do we rework expectations to alignment? Alignment in the mission that God has for us. So take a listen and find out what expectations can we tend to let go of, and what expectations should we put an even higher emphasis on. In this episode, Mark and I are going to explore. Take a listen. Let us know what you think. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Chris.
How's it going?
It's good. It's wonderful. How about you?
Good. I really enjoyed the first part of our series.
Yeah.
Talking about dating. One, just because, just reminded of, like, back then I had no idea what was going to happen with the future. And it was just all this confusion, all this feelings and all of this. What do I do about all of this stuff?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the reasons why we wanted to do this series was to help give confidence for people, as well as kind of like a mirror of checking and seeing what's going on. What am I considering with this stuff?
Yeah.
So last episode, if you haven't listened to it, I would highly encourage you diving into that. We talked about intentionality with dating. Mark and I shared each of our stories for how we met our spouses, and
I got all gooey faced thinking about when Christine and I were married. It was wonderful.
You're getting gooey faced again, buddy.
Yeah.
There is so much intentionality that needs to happen with not going too casual, and also not getting too picky too early. And so I want to talk about expectations that can derail, as well as expectations that are really healthy for us to have. So let's talk about some of the unhealthy expectations, because I feel like I'm going to show my nerdiness again.
Yes.
But I know you're actually more nerdy in this area than I am.
Oh, boy.
Microsoft Excel.
Call me out on this. My goodness. Yeah, I think I've heard of that before.
Yeah. Spreadsheets. There we go. Well, let's just use the generic term spreadsheets. That way we don't have to pay Microsoft a license or anything like that, because they get enough of licenses. But coming back to spreadsheets, I think we treat the dating world a lot like a spreadsheet, where we'll have thousands of people that we know or see, and we start to put in a whole bunch of filters.
Okay.
Like, are they the right age? Are they the right height?
Yeah.
Are they attractive enough?
Yeah.
Do they have the type of job I want them to have? Do they make enough money? Are they interested in fun, personality jiving, and all of those things? And I think those can actually be unhealthy filters.
Yeah. Yep. What came to mind for me too, for those who are less nerdy than Chris and I, would be like, maybe you're shopping for something and you've got all those options of, the type of shirt you're looking for or whatever, furniture or whatever it is. And you're putting in all these criteria and you're like, nothing matches within your price range. That's kind of what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's an overemphasis on expectations like that. Is attraction important? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is finding somebody that together you can provide well for your family helpful? Absolutely. I think, though, the index on that is way, way, way too heavy. And there's not enough index on other expectations that are even healthier. Like, do they love Jesus?
Yeah, right. I do think that is a biblical principle. I think we can stand on that one without question. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 Corinthians 6, the phrase that we hear thrown around a lot, do not be unequally yoked. Yeah, that there's importance absolutely with that one. And I think your shopping analogy really hits home for me, because I think it's a change in perspective, because we're not looking at like, I need somebody to complete me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what expectations have. It boils down to, I'm gonna punch it. It boils down to selfishness.
Yeah. So why is that a selfish perspective?
It's a selfish perspective because you're looking at, what are the things that I need to be true in order for me to be blank?
Okay.
Whether that's happy, whether that's feel like I'm not settling.
Okay.
I think we put way too much emphasis on our own criteria and not enough emphasis on what God's criteria is for a healthy spouse.
Wow. How can you tell the difference between those two things? I think there's some, draw ourselves a Venn diagram here. There's going to be some overlap.
Yeah.
There's going to be some things distinctly on both sides of it. And I don't think God necessarily is and I don't think this is what you're suggesting either, but I don't think he's necessarily saying like, pick somebody who you're not attracted to and who doesn't check any of the boxes. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. And yet there's a discernment, I think, that I hear you calling people to. So what does that discernment look like?
Yeah, I think it's a motivation factor. Before Victoria and I started dating, I was listening to a sermon by Tim Keller.
Another
2
shocker.
episodes in a row.
Yeah.
Tim Keller getting brought up. I'm sure it'll get brought up again. But he did a sermon series talking about what we look for with dating. I don't remember the exact sermon series or the title, but I remember something that stuck out to me was he said, imagine that there are 12, he was using it from like a male perspective. Imagine there are 12 women that absolutely love Jesus. They're just enraptured with him. They are spending time with him. They are making it their aim to please him. And all of them would make a wonderful partner for life in mission. It's going to help raise kids. It's going to be a wonderful spouse. Like all these things that are truly important that last.
Yeah.
And yet we dismiss 9 of them because they don't measure up to our looks standard.
Well, and when you describe it that way, it even sounds pretty impersonal and like we're not treating them like human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, and that there's no rich complexity to relationship. And there is definitely rich complexity to relationship. We're not looking for a piece of furniture.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to say as married people.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. The pressure's off for us in that sense. Yeah. So
check, done. I have somebody that meets everything that God intended for me.
So very grateful.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Yeah. And my wife just happens to be absolutely gorgeous. So that's kind of an unfair
more
analogy.
amazing than yours. Yes.
All right. Them's fighting words.
Throw down.
I think though it's hard because there is so much pressure from society to be like the good looking couple or image and projection because we see all these things on Instagram and all of the social media that is just pushing this upon us. There's actually a really interesting show and it is absolute garbage TV.
So you've just heard about this.
No, right? Victoria and I are actively watching it. It's a show called Love is Blind.
Okay.
And the premise of the show is that they're removing people from being able to see each other before they actually even get engaged.
Oh, wow.
And so it's this concept where they have pods matching up. Like people will go into a pod and they'll start talking to somebody else and there is a wall between them. So they can't see each other at all.
Okay.
And they're not allowed to talk about their physical appearance, what they look like, their height, anything like that. And their goal is that they form this connection.
Yeah.
An emotional connection before they see any kind of physical connection. And so they get engaged and then they see each other for the first time after that. And then
after they get engaged.
After they get engaged.
Wow.
Yep. So they do this like big first look thing where they like part the doors and they see each other for the first time. Then they actually like propose, like the guy gets down on one knee and then they whisk them away and they have 4 weeks after that to decide whether they're actually going to get married or not.
Hey, no pressure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it's super pressure. It's interesting. It's interesting TV, but it's also absolute garbage.
Because these are real people we're talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see a lot of like psychology that comes up in the dating and expectations and all of that stuff. But it's really interesting to see like what happens if we remove like the physical out of the dating equation entirely.
Yeah.
And there's some people that just like cannot.
They can't get over it.
I'm not physically attracted to you at all. Like even though we had this emotional connection, it's just not there. And that's really important for me. Like there's some of that makes sense. I guess where I'm going with that is don't just weigh that out. Don't let that be your first criteria.
Okay. Kind of in light of what we said in the previous episode, like knit together.
Yeah.
And let God, present in both of you, present between you, knit you together in some ways, which is, again, I'm not trying to say that in just marriage context. That happens in friendships and all relationships. So let God knit you together. And I would tell you that I would expect he would be clarifying expectations in that process.
Yes. Yeah.
So it sounds like from what you've been saying, there are some, if you will, criteria, some expectations that are appropriate, like they're a Christian, right? And there are many others, probably more than we might want to admit or recognize at first, that are things that we may want to hold more loosely.
Yeah.
And let God reveal to us in the process of building relationship what is important and what is less important.
Yeah, and I think the way that it plays out is you're never going to find somebody that just makes your life absolutely 100% comfortable.
Yeah, right.
In fact, I think that's actually unhealthy.
Agree.
I think that's what a lot of us try and do when we're dating, is like find somebody that is going to complete us.
Oh, yeah.
Or merge in perfectly with us. Hate to break it to you, even if it feels that way now, that's not going to stay the way forever.
There's this one show Christine and I love, so we'll go TV show theme here. We like The Rookie. It's a great...
that's the detective
police
one?
and detective. Yeah.
Okay.
And two of the main characters got married. And then, so they're giving their vows to each other, but they'd written their own vows. And so he says to her, I will make it my job every day to make sure you're happy. And I'm just like, oh, come on. I'm crying in the corner. I'm like, that is a horrible goal for that marriage to be based off of, because it is impossible. And it's also not the point or goal of marriage.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. It sounds wonderful, meant to be like ooey gooey TV moment, and it's just like, oh, that is, in real life, that is horrid to make a goal.
You know what? This would be fun to take it out of like the super serious and bring a little bit of levity into this. It would be probably fun to talk about how our spouses are very, very different from us.
Yeah.
So you've heard the phrase opposites attract.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think opposites refine. And I think that there's so much of marriage that is refinement.
I like that rewording.
And Victoria is very, very refining to me, because I am a future thinking, big picture, always thinking about and processing things kind of person. Victoria is very much an in the moment, like everything's good, everything's happy all the time. My emotions vacillate between like -10 and 10. Hers vacillate between like -2 and 5. So like my emotional extremes are way higher than hers. I'm a morning person. Victoria's a night person.
Yeah.
Like we have so many of these things that still 9 years later are just driving us crazy about each other. I'm a very clean person. Victoria is less.
I noticed you're choosing your words carefully.
I am, because she's going to listen to this episode. But like, those are all things like there's tension there, but there's a healthy tension.
Yeah.
Because I look at it, I'm like, why am I getting annoyed by this? Does this actually really matter? I think there's a lot of that is us putting importance on the unimportant. Whereas if we stop and we ask, like, what's really motivating this for me? It's a good refinement moment. Like, especially when it comes to like, one of the things I love the most about Victoria is how she's always so present and how much she is trusting Jesus to work things out.
Yeah.
Like, it drives me crazy because I feel like I need to work everything out. And we've talked about this before, the overdeveloped sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
But when it really grates on me, when she does that, it's a good opportunity for me to pause and think and say, oh, what she's saying has a lot of truth to it. Like, I don't need to figure this out by myself.
Yeah.
So there's good refinement that happens. So I guess my invitation for that is be willing to invite some refinement as you start to know, because we've talked about relationship is inherently inconvenient.
Yeah, it is.
So how about you and Christine? How does that play itself out?
Well, I think what's interesting is that our relationship, actually, we were very similar. So it's not going to make your point at first. Hang with me here for a second. But,
all right, hanging.
But yeah, early in our relationship, we were actually very similar, and we were looking for a safe place. I'm not suggesting that was a tremendous motivation. Okay, I'm going to say God used it.
Yeah,
very much.
God tends to use the imperfect.
He does tend to use the imperfect. Grateful for that. Yeah. So we were pretty similar in many regards. You know, conflict avoidant, all those. You know, pretty introverted, all that kind of stuff. And aligned on a number of things like kids and et cetera. But the longer that we've been together, God has been refining us through other means, and then we've started to become different in some ways, right? And that's where I see that starting to come out. And I think that's, to me, that's grace and mercy of God. We needed safe place in order to be in a safe spot for God to start doing some of that surgery, because we felt very in danger before that. And what I've discovered after over 28 years of marriage is, yes, when there are differences, they are exactly what you're describing there. I can look at those as opportunities to go like, what's really going on here? What's the tension inside of me? Why is there tension there? And God, is that something you want me to be paying attention to right now? A certain amount of that is extremely healthy, and an absence of that is extremely unhealthy. No question about it. I would also, just as far as going back to the selfishness point that you made earlier, I would commend people to consider kingdom purpose and mission. We talked about that a little in the previous episode, but let me extend that into this context here too, to say, if there's somebody in your life that you might consider, but you're like, oh, they don't meet all these expectations. Okay, fine. What is it that God's asking you to do missionally for them or with them?
Change selfishness to service.
Yeah, right. So if you are serving them as a brother or sister in Christ, missionally for the kingdom, that will change and reveal things. That will change you. That will change some of your relationship. God will be, again, building some of that fabric, and that will reveal some things to you that are not going to be obvious when you're doing this shopping for a piece of furniture type of approach, that are probably more important. So I think there's conversation with God, and there's missional perspective that I really think can help get us out of this perspective of the checklist. And into a perspective of prioritizing what God wants us to prioritize in that moment with that person.
Yeah, that's really good, because it changes the paradigm. It's shifting it from what am I getting out of this to how is God using me in this other person's life?
Yeah.
Which, however it turns out, whether you actually start dating, whether you get engaged, whether you get married, whatever that is, it's a good habit to just get into with everybody around you. But it is absolutely critical. You have that habit, you have that foundation built for marriage.
Right.
Because that is what marriage is.
Yeah.
It is putting a lot of your own desires aside in order to serve the other person. And if kids are in the picture, it's you together putting your desires aside to serve your children.
Yeah.
And it's that wisdom and knowing, how do we serve this? At the same time, you can go back to compassion fatigue, because it's easy to fall into that trap, even in marriage.
Yeah.
But balancing that and doing that in a healthy way of loving and serving exactly how God intends.
Yeah. I think I would reword what we've been calling expectations here. I think ideally it's probably something more like alignment. But that's not the end of it either. It's alignment in order to. Right. It's alignment for a purpose. So that's actually directional alignment is, whereas expectations are just a thing. Alignment is to. So are we aligned in order to together fulfill a purpose that God's brought us to? And so I remember when Christine and I were dating and we started to get involved with the ministry there in Athens at a high university where we were going to school, where we met. Good Works, wonderful ministry I've talked about before. Did some things there separately and together. And that, again, that did some of that knitting together and helped. Can we align together in order to serve together? I think that was a really important thing for us to answer at that point.
Yeah, that's good. I think if I hear the major theme of what we're calling out here with our intention or expectation, is it's changing it from me to a we. And I'm sure we've all heard of the triangle. Like, you're here, your dating partner is here at the other corner, and as you start to move up to where God is, you get closer together. It's a cheesy principle.
It's way simplistic and true.
It really is, because like that should be what you're looking for in a spouse is, are they helping you get closer to who Jesus is and fulfilling the mission that he's given you and pulling you closer to just how wonderful and desirable he is through patterns, through an example. Because what we haven't talked about is, what is the ultimate aim of marriage?
Right.
The ultimate aim of marriage is to be a symbol of Christ in the church, which is service, which is love, which is just delight in each other. The true delight, not the superficial stuff we see on TV all the time, but it is this true delighting in each other that is unity, that is oneness, that is there. So the more that you can put your own desires and selfishness aside and put that towards service in a joyful, delightful way, the better off you're going to be. So that's our invitation.
Yeah. Sounds like more conversations to come on that too.
Oh, yeah. So on that note, if you have other topics related to this, we're going to cap this at this 2-part series right now. But if you have other topics or things that you want to know around the dating world, engagement, I'm sure we'll do some things on marriage to come in the future. But let us know what topics would be interesting to you for that. Email us at info@humanproject.us. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in today. Our team is made up of myself, Chris Conlin, and Mark Wavle, and our lead editor is Derek Donley. We're a crowd-funded nonprofit. Our free resources exist because of your generous support. To learn more about us or to check out classes that we talk about here, visit us at www.humanproject.us. Thanks for joining us on our mission to bring 1 million lives closer to the fullness of God's design.